Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today we're going to take on a reel that has been around a while. I think late 1980s it started. It's the Triton 200G. It's a Shimano reel. It's a level wind reel and made out of a graphite casing and I think a single ball bearing, possibly two. And this one came in from Bobby out on in California, and congratulations on your recent retirement. He asked me to tune these up and get them ready to go fishing. So that's what we're going to do today. So I'll show you how this reel comes together, how it was made, and if you have one of these, how to tune it up and get it to go fishing again, or just to keep it well maintained if it's already out there doing its fishing for you. So we'll start by a couple of things, as always. One of the things is you'll notice I have the protective glove on my hand. That's to keep the reel greases and things off of my hand. And yes, every now and then folks say, gee, why are you wearing one of them? There was nothing in that reel. Well, I work on a lot of reels over the course of the days and weeks. It may not be this reel, it may be the next one. So to me, it's just a good habit to get into. So I wear the glove, and I also have a parts tray available. It's just the bottom of a milk jug. And all the pieces that I take off of that reel go into there so that I know when I go to reassemble where to find them. And a lot of folks have different systems. Some lay them out as they've taken them off on their workbench and that. I just find that from time to time I'll knock a piece if I do it that way. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. If it works for you, go right ahead and do that. So I'd also like to take a moment to thank all the first responders who are out there working on their front lines here during the pandemic. I appreciate everything it is that you're doing for us, trying to keep us well and to restore the health to those of us that may be experiencing the downside effects of that virus. So thank you very much. Okay, drag adjuster comes off. It's a star adjuster. We have a ball bearing behind that, and we have several case screws. So let's go ahead, take that case off now. And I recommend, although I don't have it here with me now, go to a website and get the schematic diagram for these reels, especially if you don't know what you're working on. That way it's a visual exploded view that shows you how the reel comes together and where the parts are. And a lot of times it'll show you orientations and the like as well. I also recommend that you take pictures along the way. You don't have to do videos like I'm doing, but use your cell phone camera, use a regular digital camera, use whatever works for you. But to capture critical moments where you're taking things off, to give you a pictorial representation of where the pieces were aligned and so on at that point, so that when you go to reinstall, if you have a question, you can always refer back to it. And it's always interesting. It's something like this. We have the ball bearing, and there's a stack underneath that ball bearing of shim washers and the like. And you just want to know that that's the order and the sequence that they go back in. 4 main screws take the side plate off. Well, I guess the 2 in the middle there take the side plate off too. Interesting. It's been a while since I worked on one of these. These have been around for some time. Note that these screws are shorter than the 4 side plate screws. So that's always important to do. Yep, you had to take them off. And now we should be able to remove the side plate. You have the single ball bearing there, and this is what I was saying about check out your stack washer and the sequence that it's in. So we have 4 of these little thrust washers or tension washers. We have a thicker washer, and then we have a thin one, which is the back of the bearing shield. So when you go to service this reel, know that that's the orientation of it. So this is fairly simple and straightforward on this one. This is your anti-reverse dog. You'll see it moving as I turn the main gear. Notice where the spring is attached and what side of the spring. We have a big loop, little loop. Make sure you know which side is attached. The 2 springs that go on the posts. A lot of times I'll get a reel in and somebody tried to put the spring underneath the yoke instead of on top of it. So it's easy enough to confuse the moving parts if you don't know where they go. So take pictures. I'm going to remove these 2 springs because they tend to jump all the time. Next up, I'm going to remove that main gear assembly. Then I'm going to pull the yoke and the pinion gear I'm going to slide out the jack. I'm just laying these on the table now because I'm going to clean them. And last, I'll take off the anti-reverse dog. I'm going to lay that with the spring there. And be careful with these springs. They tend to shoot, and if they shoot, you get in trouble. I wanted to do all of that to make sure that we have the side plate clean. So we'll go do that right now. There's a little bit of a dryness to this reel. I guess that's the best way to describe it when you turn it. It's sort of like it's just been dried out and missing a lot of greases and the like. So I think that's the primary focus that we'll do today. I don't see much in the evidence here of any kind of dirt or that, but it always helps to clean it out and lubricate it to the best that you can when you're doing the tune-up. So when should you do a tune-up? Well, my recommendation is at least once a year, and that tune-up should include a thorough cleaning, a check for broken pieces and parts, of course replacement if any of those pieces and parts are broken, and general lubrication. And in this case, I'm going to tear the whole wheel down because it sounds like Bobby's going to have more time to go fishing now that he's retired, so we're going to make sure that it gets a complete servicing here. All right, all of the pieces and parts are on deck, so let's go ahead and lube up and reinstall. So we have that jack that came out. Let's go ahead and put some grease underneath that so that it slides easily. And the jack sits like this. If you took your pictures along the way, that's a good place to start by taking the picture. Next up then, we're going to clean the yoke. It's called the yoke because it looks like the yoke that goes on an oxen or the like, in terms of a horse or the like, in terms of a drawn team, beast of burden. We're going to check the teeth on the pinion gear. They're all straight. They should be. If they're chipped or bent, you want to pay attention to that. Probably replace. You'll generally know if they're chipped or bent because you'll feel a vibration in the reel or a grind. But here we go. We'll put those back on. Next up then, I'm going to get to the drag assembly here. Now these are the washers that I was referring to. I like to keep them stacked. That way I know what's going on there. But you have a click ratchet underneath here, which is going to intersect. That's for the dog. So we're going to go put that dog, you'll notice it's rectangular, we're going to go put that back on. And you have to seat it properly. It'll ride high if you don't get that set the right way. Now I can go take that anti-reverse dog, put that on, and I like to just put the spring on first because it's relatively low tension on the spring, and then load it over to the side here and discover that I put the ratchet on upside down. So let's go ahead and turn that around. And you can tell because when you have it in the correct orientation, this tip of your anti-reverse dog is going to fit in these 90-degree slots. So that's the other way it would never hold. Okay, I have the main gear turned upside down now. I'm going to push the washers through and we'll do a cleaning on those. And again, you want to inspect as you're doing this. If you find that any of these washers are brittle or cracked or terribly worn, then of course you're going to want to replace them. But in this case, at least the initial observation here is that they are in pretty good condition. And you want to make sure that they're flexible. And these have a cross hatch pattern, so if you can still see the cross hatch, which we can do here, then you're in good condition with that. While I have that off, I'm going to clean the inside of this. Has a little bit of a build-up there. I noticed a little bit of resistance, so I'm going to just take a piece of steel wool, and it looks like that resistance for the most part is pitting, so there's nothing you can really do there. I'm going to take that washer then. I'm going to use some Cal's Universal Drag Grease just to tip it off a little bit. I'm going to I'm going to put it in there. I'll use my gloved hand as a tool. That's another reason why you can keep greases off your piece. If there's any excess on them, wipe it off with a paper towel. And then we can reinstall that. There's 2 points on that, much like an eared washer. You want to make sure that they get into the grooves in the main gear. Okay, next up then we have, so what we have here is a stack that's a little bit dry. And that's probably from lack of service over time. And you need to make sure that you can get these apart. I'm just using hand pressure here, and we can do that. The drag washers themselves are good, but they're sticky. So you want to just, again, clean off the old grease. Use that drag grease. If you don't have drag grease, you can substitute fishing reel grease. But drag grease was designed specifically for this. That's why I use it. Make sure that your metals are cleaned. They are. And we can start installing these right onto the drive post. It'll save us the trouble of trying to mesh them in later. And just put the dry grease on that one. Now we have a metal washer, and you'll notice we have hooks down for ears, and that's exactly how it sits. It sits in the grooves in the main gear, just like that. One more washer. Again, we'll get the grease on that. We'll wipe off any excess. Place that on top. And then we have the last one that goes on top. And again, if you had any questions on that, you would look back to your pictures. We had the 4 bell washers or tension washers. These help with the sensitivity of the star drag adjustment. These came out kind of front to back, so that's the way they're going to go in. Then we had a thick washer, and I guess I said there were 2. There's only one. There's a thick washer with the bearing shield as part of that, and the bearing shield rides up. So that's, again, that's another case where you would want to look at your orientation on a schematic if you had any questions. All right, the only thing we need here, we have a bearing, so we're going to put oil in it. I oil bearings as opposed to putting grease in them, particularly if it's a saltwater application. I'm going to do that on both sides of the bearing. I'm going to use my brush here to put a little bit of grease onto the eccentric. I'm also going to go put a little bit of grease into where the spool end is going to ride in that cavity there. And then we can reinstall. So you need to match the stud on the eccentric, which is in the up position here, with the slot on the jack. And we can give this all a turn right now just to make sure everything's doing what it should be doing, which it is. And now you want to visually sight the stud on the eccentric with that slot. The bearing came out, but that's all right. It's not an internal piece there. And then you want to flip it to make sure that you have it set. Then flip it back, and we do. So now I'm going to take the, oops, that's why the parts tray works so well. Almost forgot the 2 springs. I put the springs on each post. We're going to try that again. So this should fit perfect because I just aligned the eccentric piece. I'm going to put 2 of these screws in right now. One on each side to hold the assembly. And then I'm going to put the center springs in. That's the one. And all 4 of these screws on the outside plate were the same size, so it doesn't matter which order you put them back in. Sometimes you'll notice, like we did here, that you have 2 smaller screws that go into the bridge in between those springs. You certainly want to make sure that the 2 small ones are in their place. Here's the first one. And one on the other side. So this is a design that a lot of manufacturers follow, not just Shimano. There's a lot of them now, including like the Pen Warfare, where the majority of the gearing section is on the internal side plate as opposed to coming out with the external one, like a lot of reels have, but they rather have a cover. I just did one on a Quantum Blue Runner, same setup. The Tidewaters from Shakespeare have that setup. Most bait casters, low profile bait casters, have that setup. Okay, so this fell out, and one of the things I noticed when I was doing that is that there's a kind of a seal side on the back and an open side on the front, and the open side was facing up, so that's the way it's going to go back in. Now I can take the star adjuster and I can further test to make sure everything is right before I go too much further. So I need to make sure that I have the tension on and the reel spinning, which it is. I want to make sure that I have the free spool release, which I do. And now I can turn my attention to the bottom where the line guide is, and I can turn my attention to the spool in the back. So I'm going to go first to the line guide. That's got a little bit of a bigger screw on the bottom. And watch these. This is a plastic cap. It's a plastic cap, and if you over tighten this cap, you'll see there's ridges on there. It might be hard to see on the video, but there's ridges. Kind of looks like the top of a castle in a chess set. If you over tighten, you're going to start snapping those ridges, and if you snap those ridges, you got to go get yourself a new cap, which is getting increasingly more rare these days with these older reels. So I've put oil onto the pawl assembly, and I put oil onto the worm gear. Now I'm going to reattach the cap. If my hand is in the way, I'm going to apologize. Some of these things just aren't made very well for videos. They're made for just kind of coming together. And I didn't have that pawl wasn't set in a groove, so I just decided to spin it first. There you go. Nice operating reel. And if you like, you can put a little bit in the groove up top here. It won't hurt anything to do just that. Okay, over to the other side then. We're going to take the side plate screws out on this side, because this is how you access the spool. And again, I'm going to lay them on the table as I take these out, because if there's a difference in the length of one of these, I want to know where it is. So far the two are the same, and if I judge the side plate screws from the gear side, I would say that they're all going to be the same, but you never know, and you particularly don't know with Shimano. They seem to be the ones that leave a lot of these short in one position or the other. Some housekeeping here, get the greases out of the way. Alright, we should be able to remove the side plate now. Just want to check, just like everything else, we want to make sure that it's been cleaned. It's been a while. I use a cotton swab most of the time. Start with a less aggressive cleaner, like a cotton swab, and then if you need to, you may need to use a scraper, or you may need to use steel wool or something like that, but start easy. Right now I'm checking the teeth of the idler gear, make sure that they're all there, they're not chipped or missing, both sides. And this is a plastic gear, so you do not need to lubricate that. Plastic gears by themselves are petrochemical products, and they kind of self-lubricate. Putting a little bit of grease into that carrier there, that back bushing, if you will. Now we can pull that spool out just to check. Every now and then you'll find that you have some broken line or something hanging around the spool, or some dirt, and there's no sense taking the whole wheel apart at this point and not doing a little bit of extra precautions. I'm going to put some grease onto the drive that's going to work into the idler gear, but again, that's kind of at your discretion to do that. Make sure that the back end of this plate is clean. There's a little bit of dirt going onto the carrier back there, so let's get that off while we're at it, and then we can reinstall. And this one should be ready go fishing again. So overall, this reel has been very dependable, been around a long time, and should be around for a long time to come. Just trying to align the screw holes here. Don't force anything when you do these pieces. There's a little stud here I'm wrestling with. This little stud goes in this hole here, and for whatever reason I'm just having a little bit of difficulty. There we go. Alright, so now the 4 screws go back in. That kind of leads me to don't force anything. You're only going to get in trouble if you try to push something too hard. Just realize that it came off easy. It should go back on easy, and if it doesn't, something is misaligned there, and just take your time to set it right. All right, we're almost done with this. The maintenance, as you see, takes 15-20 minutes to do a reel like this, so there's no excuse really not to do that on a regular basis. And again, if you heavily fish it, do it at the beginning of the season or the end of the season. Doesn't really matter, before you put it in storage. Come on back and do it at mid-season if you're fishing heavy. If you're not fishing heavy, if you only have it out a few times over the course of the season, do it at the end of the season before you put it in storage. That's usually the best. Okay, handle goes back on. Handle nut goes back on. That's a 10mm nut for those keeping track of what tools are needed. And as you see, there's no fancy tools here. Pretty much it's what everybody kind of has in their toolkit. We need to put the nut cap cover on. Generally, if this is flat or perpendicular to the screw hole, this cap will fit and align properly like it is here. You can see that it goes into the hole. All right, one more piece then. And then we'll give it a test drive. All right, Bobby, I think we got one down here, one getting ready to go back to you. Let's give it a run. Oh, what a difference. It's quiet. It spins easily, turns with a finger. Works properly with the free spool. This one's ready to go fishing again. Nice reel overall. So I hope you've enjoyed that particular rebuild. If you have one of these, you now know how to service it. If you see one coming up that you can buy used and you're interested in it, you now know how it's made. And if you have one that needs service and you don't feel like servicing it yourself, well, now you know somebody who services them, and you can contact me by the information on my business card to get that reel repair information sent to you. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Again, thank you to the first responders, and everybody, please stay safe, listen to the authorities, wear your masks, keep your social distancing, stay well, stay watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.